Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another live stream right here on Freebo Photos. And today I have quite a few things kind of planned out and lined up. We'll talk about a few things, edit some photos, and kind of just celebrate the end of the year and looking forward to the 2024 year. Now, my computer is acting all kinds of weird on me. I had to literally uninstall and reinstall On1. So everything that I had planned to do, I now have to navigate to. I had an album. I don't know where that album went. I guess I didn't back it up before I did the reinstall. So there goes that. But with all that being said, I hope you guys are, having a good holiday time period and getting some time to edit photos and update things and spend time with families and friends and stuff like that. But let me see if I can navigate to the folder with the items that I want to edit, and then we'll jump into the actual editing portion of today's live stream. And that is here. And I'm, kind of sparing you guys the look here and here. And we'll just come to this folder. I think I'll just edit at the folder level. All right, let's jump into the computer and take a look at what it is that we're doing. I guess I should adjust this. There we go. Well, On1 is thinking itself through right now. I'm selecting the build conference photos. We're just going to edit some portraits today, and I'm going to show you kind of how to remove a background and maybe replace it with a different background. So that was what is on the agenda for today. But like I said, I had to uninstall and reinstall On1. Ran into some issues with it. So I just did a clean install, which is why everything is so tiny on the screen compared to how I had it set up. It didn't go back to my original settings. I just reverted the settings back. But it's okay. We're going to make it through, This is unfortunately the way things go with photo editing and doing things in general, especially when you're trying to do a live stream. Computers, at least my computer, never seems to want to cooperate with me. It always gives me a challenge. So I don't know if that's because of me, my computer, or a combination of a few things. So, and of course, I don't get the previews of the images right now either. And this is a catalog folder, see, it even took away the catalog aspect of it. Well, okay, I'm going to have to recatalog these later on, but not today. Okay, portrait. Let's find a portrait. There is a headshot of a gentleman that I took at the Build Expo, and I just need to find it. There it is. All right, so this gentleman right here, I think we'll go with this photo. Okay, come on, you can do it, On1. You can do it. Let's go ahead and double click. Yeah, see, it's gotten rid of all of my settings, so I feel like my keyboard shortcuts aren't even gonna work. I'm gonna have to readjust this. Yeah, even the properties window is gone. So I apologize. I will have to do some readjusting on the fly, but it is what it is. All right. So here we are with a portrait, and notice that there's a very simple background. So what I'm going to be doing right now is something that I think is pretty straightforward. And the question that I've been asked in the past is, how do you edit the background and like put a person on a different background? So that's essentially what we're going to do. I'm going to show it in one way for sure. The second way, maybe if my computer wants to cooperate. So I'm not going to necessarily edit the image right now because I think, and in fact, I'll just throw some Brilliance AI on there, and it's not even set the way that I like it, so it's going to give me something that I don't even know what it's going to give me. The struggles of resetting and yeah, see, it did a little too much with the color, at least for my liking. Maybe pull down on here. We'll say that we like that. I am not a huge fan of it, but we'll say that we like it. What I'm going to do is first I need to cut out my subject. And one of the best ways of cutting out the subject, and I won't say the best way, all right, one way to add a background is you can come to the add filter and then you come to textures. Now, what we're used to seeing textures used as is like an overlay type of thing, but there's actually a function inside of textures where you can replace. Now, you can import a texture, which I'm not going to do in this situation. I'm just going to go ahead and click on bokeh, which is a preset. So if you are watching this with your own images, you'll be able to follow along. And then what I'm going to do is click on the properties box here, or the window, and I'm going to put this over here. In fact, I'll just put it right here for now. Let's go to window, and I want to auto collapse there. At least I get that. Oh, sorry, hit my microphone stand. All right. So what I want to do is mask this behind the subject. I'm going to hit the drop down here to get to my AI masking options, and I'm going to select people. Now, it does a really good job when the background is pretty simple and your subject is pretty pronounced in the scene. It's a headshot, right? So I'm showing this on a very simple photo, and I think this is where I would recommend using this portion or this type of effect. Now, what I would like to do next is paint this particular piece away from, or this effect, the bokeh effect, away from the subject. So I am going to go with paint out, so that way the individual doesn't end up with the effect on him. And then I'm going to hit apply. So it's going to take it away from him, or paint it off of the subject, and only apply it to the background, as we can see there. Now, this on its own looks pretty good, but like I said, there are ways of actually applying this, and hopefully my screen, because I don't have these side panels on the large setting, so I apologize if it's hard to see. But if you come back over to your textures effect, underneath texture where it says bokeh 012, then there's a thing that says mode. If you click that and you select replace, it's actually going to replace the background. And what textures really is another photo. So this keeps you from having to use layers. Now, there is a way of doing this with layers, which is the second way that I will show here in a little bit. But what this really allows us to do is modify it in one layer, so to speak, with just using an effect. And you can use any background. So if you click import, I can go and find, and I don't think my extras are going to show up because why would they? Yeah. So I'm not even going to go that route right now because it is what it is. Nonetheless, what you can do is you can import any background image. So if you take an image of pretty much anything and you want to put that into the background, you can do that. Now, it's not perfect using the AI masking. So this is where you would have to take your brush and come back and paint over. And my computer, it really does not want to cooperate today. I don't know what's going on. I did a restart and everything, and it just doesn't want to cooperate. Now, what I will say is you should hit Command and R. Don't show this again. Forget what happens when you do like a full settings reset. And I'm just going to paint over here just to show you, like, you could clean this up. And I should probably be using the refine tool, but hopefully you get the idea here. This is a really quick way of adding a background to your images. But remember, I had a very simple background to work with. It's a gray backdrop, and my subject, it's a very prominent subject here in the photo. So I didn't have to do a whole lot here to get that background to pop up. All right. So just remember, that's the first step, is you want a simple background. All right. You get something like this when you have that. Now, let's see, and I guess let's talk about why, or what you can do with this afterwards. So the effect that I created here is all on one photo, right? If you click on layers, you can see I only have one layer. So if I minimize this, now that means that everything that I apply to the effects section here is going to impact the entire photo at this point. So I'll just name this BG. I can hit add filter, and if I wanted to, let's say always adding a glow always helps out a little bit. So I'll just pull that up. Maybe that looks decent. And then I can say, you know what? I actually want to, let's enhance some colors here. And I feel like this should go under the glow, because I feel like the glow filter is a finishing effect. Most of the time I'm putting that on after I do all of my other edits, but everyone uses these things differently. So I'm going to click on color range down here, and let's maybe desaturate some of the reds. Yeah, and you can see how that's kind of helping his skin tones, because the Brilliance AI, I haven't readjusted this to my own settings. I haven't gone into the preferences and said, hey, only do this much. So it kind of baked the photo in a way that I wouldn't personally like it to be. But that is what it is. And then maybe we'll come over here to the oranges and maybe desaturate those just a touch as well. So I'm regaining the color in the person. I'm going to click the properties icon here, hover over this item here, and I'm going to select people again, because I think that it gives a really good mask for what I'm doing, and I want to paint this effect into the person and away from my backdrop. So I'm going to separate the two and work on them separate. So I'm just going to call this person color adjustment. And I didn't spell adjustment right. It's early in the morning. My computer's giving me a hard time, but I'm going to keep pushing through. And we're going to rename this to BG adjustment. That time I spelled it correctly. And I want to saturate the background. So I'm just going to pull up on the saturation slider. And I think that that looks okay. So what I'm going to do is come over to my properties, and you could also copy these masks and paste them, but because my keyboard shortcut isn't set up, I'm literally doing this by hand, and or using the AI, I guess, not by hand. But I want to add this to him, and I don't want to modify the saturation on the person because I have my own color adjustment for the person instead. So this time I want to paint out. All right. And then I'm going to hit apply, and then it's going to take away this saturation adjustment from the subject and only give me the background. So now what I can do is modify the vibrance, the color, all that good stuff. And I think it works out pretty well so far. Now, if I wanted to come in here and only modify the orange because I feel like the orange needs its own modification, you could do all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time doing that. So then the last thing that I would probably do to this overall image is throw some dynamic contrast in there. We'll hit add filter, throw some dynamic contrast, and it just helps him stand out, be a little bit more prominent. And I'm starting to think that the background's a little too bright, so we may have to go and adjust that as well. But I'm going to click on opacity here and pull down the opacity of this dynamic contrast. And again, I'm going to paint this in only on my person. It makes it a lot easier to do it this way using the AI when you have a very well pronounced subject. I find that the AI masking works well enough on large subjects like this. Headshots, that's what I've been using it on, and it works great, at least in my own testing as I'm showing you here. So we'll call that pretty good. I would probably come in, clean up some of these blemishes just a little bit, and then maybe enhance his eyes if I really wanted to spend some time working on this image. Maybe even work on some highlights in his hair, stuff like that. But this was really just to show you what you can do for a portrait, to modify the background, separate a subject. Now, I did say that the background was a little too bright. So if you come back to your background layer, which is a texture layer, you have the brightness slider underneath tone and color. And if I just pull down on that brightness, you can see that I'm controlling the backdrop there. So I think that something like that looks pretty good. And I probably should go and control the highlights on the individual here. What is this doing? See, I even got the mask on and I don't even use those. So that's probably why I was, yeah. Anyhow, I'll do the final thing here, which is just pull down on the highlights, and I will add this to the person. People, paint in, apply. We'll let this apply to him. We should see those highlights kind of reduce. That's a little too drastic because I do like a little bit of a shine in my images. So we'll go something like that. And I feel like his hand is a little too bright. So what I'll do is add another adjustment. And this one, I'll just leave it on the negative exposure. And I will paint turn off my perfect brush, and then I'll just paint that over his hand. It's okay if it looks like crap right now. Do something like that. I'm going to pull down the opacity, and then I'll push up on my actual exposure and probably just pull down the highlights a little bit, and it can stand to have some contrast, so that way it blends pretty well. So here is the before we did any adjustments to the overall image. And here is the final image using Brilliance AI, as well as making some local adjustments and, really working with mass. Now, this went a lot faster than if you had to do this by hand. So the AI masking tools, they do work on subjects and photos like this. So that is one way of working with the background. Now, if you wanted to do something more, what you could do is you could work with layers, and essentially I'll showcase it, but I'm not going to be able to put a background in there right this second, because the backgrounds that I had already selected I can't get to, because ON1 is not cooperating with me. With that being said, I'm going to click duplicate layer, and I'm just going to add the layer. What this does is it gives me two copies of the same thing, and that's perfectly fine, because on one of the layers, I'm just going to go ahead and turn this layer off. And on this top layer, I'm just going to, or I turned off the bottom layer, and then I'm going to hit the mask icon on the top layer. I'm going to come over to my people, because that's what I want. And I want to paint in. This is going to keep the person. And then I'm going to hit apply. And you're going to see these little gray boxes, like the transparency indicators, pop up. That means he is no longer on his own, like there's no more background. So I could literally turn this particular image back on. And if I come over here and let's say, you know what, let me turn this off. I'll simulate what you could do, but just imagine this being any other photo that you decide to pull in by clicking this plus icon. You could pull in any other photo and do whatever you want to. But I'm going to come over here to the background, and I am going to reset this mask like so. And you can see he's kind of covered up by this effect now. Well, what I can do is pull up on the opacity and completely replace it. So now I have a background of whatever I want, and I can change this to anything and everything. So let's go with these bokeh, or maybe this one. I don't care. It doesn't really matter. So now if I turn on this layer, you can see he is now over that layer. So you can really just start mixing and matching. And what this does, again, if you had your own layer, your own background image, this gives you the ability to do a number of things of editing and stylizing and things of that sort. And then once you have the two ready to go and you want to edit them as one image and kind of stylize them, what I recommend you do is you click on the topmost layer, make sure both of your layers are turned on, and then you'll right click and click new stamped layer. This is going to create a stamped visible layer. Think of hitting Command Shift E, Command Option Shift E. That's the long keyboard shortcut in Photoshop to do a stamped visible layer. And what that's going to do is give you one photo combining these two layers into one image, essentially. But you still retain these two layers. So it's just taking a little bit of time to merge these two. And while it does that, I'm going to sip a coffee. So yeah, like I said, my computer is not cooperating with me today. I restarted it. I don't know what's going on. On1 seems to be the only program that's not working with me. Lightroom, Photoshop, Affinity Photo, Luminar, all of the other programs that I use, they were working perfectly fine. And yeah, so hopefully I figure out what's causing this to work so slow. Hey, good morning, Sean. What's up, my man? Hopefully things are well for you. And yeah, so I'm not going to waste your guys' time. My computer doesn't want to cooperate. So, oh, maybe. as soon as I say something, it's like, no, I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do. Well, at least it gave the hint that it was creating the layer, but it didn't actually finish it. Nonetheless, once you have that new layer, you can stylize it however you want. You could add presets and really go to town on your edit here. So I now have my stamp layer. If I turn this layer and this layer off, then you can see that I still have the foreground and background. And let's say I wanted to make this a black and white. I don't, but you know, just for showcase purposes. So, you know, something like that, maybe this one. There you go. That actually doesn't look too bad. You know, and it is what it is. Yeah, so I do my live streams in the morning so that way I can kind of spend time with the family later on in the day, because my evenings get crazy. The mornings are a lot more controlled because they're still asleep. And when it's early in the morning and they're still asleep, I wake up early. I get up at 5 in the morning. So it just works out for me to do a stream in the morning versus in the evening. And then Mark says, so I hope we aren't back to the On1 crashing. Yeah, I hope so. Look, I'm not going to turn this into a On1 issue session. It is what I have been experiencing. It just happened this week. That's why I did the reinstall last night, actually. And then I woke up this morning and I was trying to troubleshoot a few other things before I got on the stream. This is what I, kind of ended up with, which is fine. It's just one of those situations where you got to know what's going on. But I hope that we're not running into the crash issue, which I don't think is the case. Sean says, I've had no issues with 2024. Yeah, I didn't have any issues until this week, Sean. I've been making content all month long, every single day of the week throughout the month of December, and it was working perfectly fine. And this week, for some reason, I don't know what happened. Skynet became self-aware or something. Maybe all the AI in it, started to catch up with itself. I'm not sure. But yeah, I will continue to troubleshoot, figure out what's going on with my version. It may be my computer, because, yeah, but all is well. All is well. And Sean says he's planning on recording a new one today, time permitting. Yeah, not. What subject are you going to be recording on, or what is it that you're going to record subject wise? So jumping back into the edit here, that's how you can modify a background from a subject. Again, I kind of cheated because I selected a subject that is on a very simple backdrop, which is what I recommend you do, by the way. I recommend that you select a subject that is on a backdrop that is easy to work with. Because if you get a subject that's on a very busy backdrop, you're making the AI work a little bit harder than it probably ought to. Okay, a 2023 recap. Nice, nice. And that's kind of what this live stream is going to be, is that recap. But yeah, the recommendation that I give to everyone whenever they ask me, like, hey, this whole backdrop thing, I want to do it. I recommend that you use a simple backdrop, because I'll show you another example. We'll use this young lady here. I hate that I don't know their names. Normally, whenever I photograph someone, I get their name. But at the Build Expo, it was a long line just to even get in front of these individuals to take their photos, because I guess these are professional models. I'm not entirely sure. They were set up at different booths trying to showcase different lights and things of that sort, all of which were constant lights or LEDs. So it wasn't this, none of this was shot with flash, which is typically how I shoot my headshots, which, you know, that's just a personal preference. Not saying that that's right or wrong. That's just how I like to shoot my headshots with speed lights, because I typically go on location. Nonetheless, I didn't even frame this one properly. I actually cut her elbow off. I didn't realize that until just now, but I wasn't picking this as like some amazing piece of work. Instead, I was selecting this particular image to show you that I have a very simple backdrop here again. So On1 should have a fairly easy time figuring out the backdrop. So if I come to the textures filter again, I should be able to come over here to masking, and I should be able to paint out from people. You could also try to use the foreground and background. My mileage varies drastically with this, because I don't know if On1, like the software, really knows what a foreground and a background is. I don't have a warm and fuzzy in the AI's depth perception, because I find that it picks backgrounds that are in the foreground, or items in the foreground, and includes it in the background, and vice versa. So it's kind of hard, but I usually get a good mask with people. It's kind of hard to see what the mask is doing because of that red backdrop, but you can kind of see that I get a pretty decent mask here. And what I want to do is paint out, because again, I don't want the texture over my subject. So I'm going to hit apply, let On1 think itself through on this. We should see that remove from her skin, and you know, that's the most noticeable places of seeing it eventually. Okay, so now this actually looks really, really good. I had no intentions of editing this photo, but you know, now there's this inspiration, and this is kind of one of the cool things about shooting on solid backdrops that are well lit. You can add textures to them. That's another way of working with backdrops inside of On1, where you add textures to them, and it just enhances or amplifies the overall image. And you know, I could probably pull this up a lot more, so that, like, you know, maybe even to 100%. I don't know what an extra 5% is going to make a difference on. And this just looks a lot cooler, in my opinion. I could probably come over here. This could stand to be a little bit darker. And you know, now that I'm really looking at this, I may click here, copy the mask, and I'm gonna add a tone enhancer, because I want to really impact that background. All right, so we'll click that mask again, come over here and hit paste. So now I should have, yep, got the background selected there. I'm going to pull down on here, and then I am going to grab, let's go with maybe push up on the contrast. Yeah, that works. And I'm going to show you a technique that I use often. I don't think there's much in the shadows. Yeah. Okay, well, So that kind of did what I was going to do, which is creating a vignette on just the background. But you can kind of see what's happening there, which I think is pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. But the technique that I was going to do is I was going to show you how to kind of create a vignette into the background. So it's kind of like there was a snoot shot on the background and it kind of just spread out. I used to do this a lot in Photoshop. You could do this inside of ON1 as well. The way that you do it, though, is you got to have 2 layers. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this particular layer, hit add layer, and then I'm just going to do this pretty quick. All right, so on the top layer, I'm going to cut out my subject, and I'm just going to paste this mask actually. And then because I know that she is the opposite of what this mask is, I'm going to invert. And now if I turn off this bottom layer, I should have her by herself, which that works well. It doesn't have to be perfect for this particular effect. All right. So now I'm going to click on the bottom layer, and just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to rename this. This is going to be person, and this is going to be BG. So I'm going to click on my background layer, come over to local, and then I'm going to hit the letter M on my keyboard to get my masking bug. Oh no, that even went back to hiding. All right. You gotta, where is the auto hide thing? I hate that. Why can't I find it? It's not under settings. I thought it was under window. Did I just overlook it? It's not hide panels. All right, well, and I know it's not properties because that's the properties menu there. I know it's like right in front of me, whatever what I'm looking for should be right in front of me at least, but it does not look like it is. So I'll deal with it and fix that later because I can't find it on the fly. But I hate this thing disappearing on me. It's very, very annoying. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and click on edges, click right here in the center, and oh, well, I need to be on a local adjustment. I was like, why are you getting rid of my background? All right, so on the local adjustment, and then I'm going to click edges, come up here, grab my masking bug, edges, click there, and I'm going to invert this because I meant to click center. And I do this often, but you know, just know that you got to go the opposite. All right. And now I'm going to drag this in, and it creates this vignette behind her of that background getting darker on the outer edges. And it's like a 2-layered vignette. Yeah, so Sean, I was actually looking for the tool that allows me to keep the masking bug properties panel on the screen at all times, as opposed to it auto hiding when you move away from it. But I'll find that one a little bit later. I know it's in one of these settings and I should know exactly where it's at, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because I'm recording and I'm mentally not paying attention, but I know that it is somewhere up here. And yeah, I just don't want to waste a whole bunch of time trying to find it because, yeah, I'll figure it out a little bit later. Nonetheless, now that I've added this vignette, so to speak, to my background, you can see what it's done. Now, if I turn off this top layer, you can see, oh, top layer, you can see, yeah, I'll just make it drastic. Turning off that top layer, you can see I still have my subject on the bottommost layer, but because I cut her out on this one, when I turn this on, she just shines through. And I really enjoy doing this effect on some of my, like, depending on who I'm doing the headshot for. If I'm doing this for like a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher, I don't do this effect. But if I'm doing this for a brand, like a brand headshot photo shoot, or, you know, all kinds of different things, then what I'll do, or I will do this effect because I think that this effect is just really, really pronounced. Now, obviously, this vignette is way too strong. All right. So I would back this off and I would probably have it somewhere like that. So turning this off and on, you can see it just kind of darkens down those corners. This composition probably isn't the composition that I would work with. So let's see about recomposing this a little bit, which I don't want to be on freeform. Let's go original ratio. And then I would probably tighten this in. And yeah, so no matter what, I'm probably not going to get the look that I would prefer on this image, because with my headshots, I do have a personal preference. And sorry, I had to clear my throat. I do have a personal preference with my headshots that the eyes are on the top third line wherever I'm photographing. So here, I don't even know what I was using, probably at 85. Yeah. So I was using the 85, and like I said, it was a long line. I wasn't really paying attention to my composition. I was just snapping shots, and, you know, because there was like 30 people all trying to take photos of this one person. Probably wasn't 30 people, but it was a lot of people. And some people were very rude and they were taking longer. I didn't want to be one of those people that was being rude. Maybe I should have been a little bit more rude, but nonetheless, whenever I do my headshots, I personally like to have the eyes on the top third of the line. And that gives me usually enough headroom for stuff like this. Now, what I needed to do in this particular image to make that a reality is I needed to step back with my 85. That would have made her a little bit smaller in the frame, which would have allowed me to come down and get her eyes and keep her hands for the pose. Because if I crop this in to the liking that I would normally have for this type of headshot, which I would probably do something like this, because her eyes, I'm not a stickler for like straightening things out perfectly, because if I really wanted to, I should probably straighten her eyes like so. And I think that that looks good, but I enjoy imperfections, like minor imperfections in my work. Now, this honestly isn't a terrible shot as is, you know, like this. You know, I could probably live with this particular image looking like so. Once, there we go. Like, I think that this is a great shot. I feel like, you know, when you look up her arms and it goes, you know, these are leading lines, right? Just didn't mean to really get into composition here, but, you know, for the sake of us being here now, Uh, Whenever a model gives you leading lines, you should use those to the best of your advantage. And I'm just bringing up the crop tool again. So I have her arms as my leading lines, and it's okay if there's stuff on the outsides, like you can see the background here on the outsides. The leading lines is what really helps with drawing you into their eyes, and this works great for headshots, which are just portraits of the upper portion of the person. And I'm sure there's some technical answer to what a headshot is. What I like to say is it's not a headshot if I go below the chest. All right. If I go below the chest, it's just a portrait. But anything chest level and above, then it is a headshot, because with lawyers, doctors, and teachers, you usually want to show some form of chest level in there as appropriate. And then everything up. And you want to be a little bit closer, but most people don't like to be like don't get macro close to them, right? Nonetheless, when I put the eyes on the upper third, regardless of if I'm in portrait orientation, or if I am in landscape orientation, then I go ahead and I put the eyes on that upper third line, typically in camera, because I don't really have to crop. And sometimes I shoot a little bit wider, knowing that I'm going to crop in post. But with my portraits, I don't find that I crop a whole lot. If anything, it's just to really refine the composition I was going for in camera. But I always use my grids in camera, and my photos typically come out the way that I need them to, which actually brings me to a good point. I'm in the process of transitioning from the Canon system to the Sony system, and part of that is because I do need to crop in my macro work, which is something that I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. But nonetheless, this is the image that I would probably crop into and create in camera, and I would probably have stepped back just a little bit so that way I could get the fingers in focus. Or I would have dropped down. I think I was shooting at chin level, and if I had shot up a little bit more and had her drop her chin, then I would have been able to get more of that leading line coming down. And it's all perspectives, but anything that's closest to the camera is going to look larger. So do you really want a large looking arm distracting from the overall image? But what I could do is come in and very quickly and easily bring down the tone. All right, I could bring down the tone here on the arms and really make things a little bit better. So yeah, that is a impromptu composition on headshots and portraits. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit the check mark on this and save that. And then we'll just jump over to the main count here. So yeah, you are absolutely correct. It is very, very expensive to switch camera systems. And for, the longest time, I enjoy Canon. I really do. And I'm keeping my EOS R6 Mark II. But I did trade in my EOS R and my Canon R6 I. So those two cameras, along with a handful of lens. And what I'm doing with the R6 Mark II is turning this into more of my video camera, because, I am a content creator, so I need a camera to shoot video. But I'm jumping to the Sony system for a few different reasons. I see your comments, and I'm going to address those here in a second. In fact, I'll just bring them over to this screen. Let's see here. Make it a little bit larger. That way I can see them on the screen. Come on. There we go. All right. Uh, but the reason why I'm switching from Canon to Sony isn't because Canon's terrible. It's because with Sony, there are third party lenses that I can use native to the E mount versus using an EF version of the glass, which most of these third party companies aren't creating anymore. And as much as the EF glass is great, it works really, really well. I've used a lot of the Tamron third party glass, the 70 to 200, 24 to 70, which the 70 to 200 is a phenomenal lens. I used it a lot in my headshots. It just wasn't, it was a massive rig because I used the EOS R with the adapter with the 70 to 200, and it just looked like this clown camera that I was photographing people with. And I realized this when I was photographing a yearbook a few weeks back. I guess it's about a month back now. And the one of the kids, he was like, "Wow, that's a really big camera." And once he said that, some of the other kids heard it, and it was very distracting. Now, I don't shoot a lot of children portraits or photo books. What's the thing? Yearbooks. I don't shoot a lot of those, but it was distracting enough that it did take away from my direction that I was trying to give to the kids. And anyone who has ever photographed, hundreds of kids, you probably already know that it's easy for a kid to get distracted. And so what I want is a smaller system, and one that's easier for me to carry around. It's easier for me to set up. It's not as light or as heavy. And I also get the opportunity to get the 35 to 150 f2 to 2.8 lens. So for all those reasons, I want to switch over to Sony. And the list goes on. Those are just like the main reasons. Now, the reason why I brought that up now is because the megapixels. And I'm planning to get the Sony a7 IV. Yeah, I think that's what it is. The Sony a7 IV and a a7R3. Because one is a 30 megapixel camera or 33 megapixels, and the other one is a 42. Now, I'm not one of those like resolution crazy people that I need the most resolution possible. However, what I've noticed in my macro work is 20 megapixels and 24 megapixels, they weren't working quite well. Now, with my EOS R, I was able to get the 30 megapixel images, and whenever I cropped in, I retained a lot of that resolution, and it worked out pretty decent. But the problem is I only use the EOS R really for my headshots, because I had a battery grip on it. It was really designed more for, or at least I built that camera system to be more of my studio rig, if that makes sense. And so that's why I was like, okay, that's not going to work for me to shoot macro, even though I absolutely could have made that work because I do have the 100 millimeter macro lens, which I love. But ultimately I had to change systems. So that way, when I zoom in, I'll have more resolution, and I can also use the Super 35 mode on the Sony a7R3 whenever I do any sort of street photography, and I'll get extra reach because that uses the center of the sensor, which I think is a 1.5 times crop. So any lens, I'm going to get, I'm going to get extra reach on it. So that's, all in a nutshell why I'm switching to Sony. And hopefully that doesn't mess with my overall, editing techniques. So let me go to the comments real quick. So Mark says he has the A7R4 and he loves it. Yeah, I looked at the A7R4. I don't think I'm going to get one of those, just because I do need the flip out screen. which is why I'm going with the A7 III. I'm sorry, A7 IV, because that has the flip out screen and it has the 30 megapixels, which is perfect for pretty much everything that I need to do. And then the A7R III, I don't need the flip out screen as much because that's usually locked off on a tripod whenever I'm photographing my headshots, and I'll have the high resolution. But also, I don't plan to put a battery grip on it. So that should help me grab that camera whenever I do like fine detailed macro photography, which I'm going to talk about here in a little bit as well. Can you get an adapter so you can use your Canon lens on Sony? I think there are some adapters for the, and I'm going to go ahead and add this one. So Sean is asking, can I get an adapter so I can use the Canon lens on Sony? I think the answer is yes, but I likely won't because I'll still have the EOS R6, and all of the lens that I saved are the RF versions. So the RF 35, the 50, the 85, the 100, then the 16. So 5 lens, all primes, which I'm okay with because I use the 35, which is what I'm using right now, the 35 and the R6 II. That's like my primary combo. The 35 just stays on there, and that's a small system. I enjoy it. I use it with my family whenever we go out places. Mark said he came from Canon as well, so you know the struggle. And, you know, I'm looking forward to it. We'll see, you know, how I get the edits. And then Sean says, I shot Canon film back in the 90s and cropped DSLR in early 2000s. Yeah, you know, I never shot film on a SLR film camera. I shot film on like those little disposable ones that you get at like the grocery store or wherever. You used to get them back in the 90s, and then you take them to a 1 hour photo exposure and just hope you got something. I remember doing those, but I never shot film. Even though in high school I developed film in print shop, which that was interesting. But it was never my images. I was just developing them for the photography class because the school I went to was separated print shop and photography class. The people that shot film, they would drop their film off, and then I would, or someone in our class would have to develop it and expose it for them. So you never knew what you were exposing. Some inappropriate things because, you know, high schoolers do things that they have no business doing. Dow says hello from, wow. Uruguay? I'm probably not pronouncing that right at all, and I do apologize. But I am extremely happy that you are here. Wow. Thank you. It is not, or it has dawned on me that I definitely have an international audience that is extremely, extremely awesome. So I want to say thank you. And I do have a thank you for everyone who subscribed to the channel coming a little bit later. So I really do appreciate that. When you crop a lot, you need megapixels. Yeah, you're right, Mark. You need megapixels when you crop a lot. And I do have, you know, when I get to the segment where I start talking about the future of the channel, we're really going to dive into that. And then Dow says he wants to wish you a happy new year, many blessings. Please continue with this channel, which informs us of many useful things. Fuji 26 megapixels and my macro stacking works great. Yeah. So macro photo stacking, that is actually what I'm going to be moving into in 2024 and beyond. Just again, for personal reasons. So I appreciate that there are people who may already have that knowledge here. Sean says, I've got a Fuji X-T5 and the 40 megabyte sensor. I think that may be a megapixel sensor. is great for cropping and retaining resolution. Yeah, so again, I crop a lot in my macro work just because I usually photograph things, like I was messing around photographing this little trinket here, which is a Lego minifigure. And, I photograph Lego minifigures for fun. It's just something you can create a scene, and you don't really need, like, they pose forever. So it's not like dealing with a person that's like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. And you could really like build stuff up, and you could do stuff to those, and it'll be fine. I lit one on fire and photographed it. Don't tell my kids. But I did that, and I thought it was just fun. You can't do that to a person, nor would I ever want to. But Lego minifigures, nah, who cares? Mark says mine is 60 megapixels, I'm assuming, and I use it for beach and landscape, and I can shoot pretty wide and then crop as needed. Yeah, that's honestly the reason why I'm leaning towards the A7R3 is because it's a 42 megapixel camera. I don't necessarily need 61, or at least I don't think I do. I did rent a A7 III and an A7R3, I think it was. The A7 III, it just didn't have enough of the resolution for my everyday camera. The 24 megapixels, that's essentially the R6. So I didn't really care for that. The A7R3 worked well for the images that I wanted to capture. So I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to stick with the A7R3 and get the A4. Because the A4 has 33 megapixels, and it also has the flip out screen, which is extremely helpful when I am photographing events, because I use my flip out screen on all of my EOS R cameras every single time I am photographing. And part of it is probably because it doesn't have the tilt up screen, which I think is kind of helpful. Like on the the Sony A7 III and the R3, the flip out screen looks a little bit different than it does on other cameras, and I really appreciate that. So I do look forward to using the new Sony systems when I get them, which I'm sending them to KEH, not sponsored by them, but I think that, I've heard good things. I'm trusting that, I'm going to get pretty decent value, and they have the camera gear that I'm looking to get for Sony, which is, again, the A7 IV. I am getting that used, and the A7R3, as well as the Sigma 50 1.4 art lens. And I have a few other lenses that I'm also looking at getting there. And then I already purchased the 35 to 150 Samyang f2 to 2.8 and a Sigma 105 macro art lens. And then I have the Nifty 50 50 millimeter FE 1.8 lens as well, because I love 50 millimeter portraits. There's something about the 50 that I just enjoy. But that 51.4 is really going to be my main portrait lens, and the 1.8 is just going to be like mine. I need a small camera setup to just go and shoot some things. So yeah. Okay. Dal's photography is Daniela. Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. And then we got Calvin. It says, I moved from Canon to Olympus for macro using the 60 macro lens and 90 macro lens. Yeah, What I'm finding with macro photography, because I use my 85 f2, since it's not technically a macro, it's like a 2-to-1 reproduction. Um, what I'm finding is I prefer a tighter zoom macro because I don't need as like I do single subject macro where I don't really care so much about the background, and it's usually leaves. So, and in fact, I wonder if I'll pull up the photo of the leaf here in a little bit because that was kind of going to be the segue into where I'm going in the future. And then Sean said he's got to go, so I appreciate you for hanging out. Um, Remember that when you shoot macro in studio, it's much better to have a manual focus and more important, some extra light. Yeah, I agree with you, Daniela. It is definitely important. And when I don't actually shoot macro in studio. The irony of that is I usually shoot nature macro. I'm more inspired by leaves, trees. Well, I guess not so much trees, not macro photographing trees, but like the bark of a tree, I guess you could say. My macro is more nature focused, and I really just enjoy that. I do use a flash, I use speed lights, and I use a tripod, and it typically works out well. Now, I'm no like expert at macro photography. It's really just something that I enjoy doing. I find it extremely, extremely fun. Um, and so that's what I just go out and I take photos, and I walk on or walk paths into the woods, and it's like, hey, look, this leaf on the ground, and I find it really, really fun. Now, with that being said, where is I'm looking for a folder of images that I just shot recently. Oh, well, helps if you are on the right hard drive. Can't find the things you're looking for in places that they don't exist. And I'll click here. Okay, so let's jump over to the screen real quick. So I'm in Lightroom now, and this is actually something that you're going to see a lot more in future videos and live streams here on the channel. Is I'm going to be using Lightroom a lot more frequently, and that's because I purchased a program called Helicon Focus, and the integration with Lightroom to Helicon I just find fascinating, and it's easy for me to do a focus stack because Helicon Focus allows me to stack images. Now, I could send these to Photoshop and use focus stacking there, but in my testing, I trialed Helicon Focus. It also came highly recommended. I think many of the macro or focus stack users, they do that. But this is kind of my macro shot type of experience. I was out on a trail and there was this leaf, and let me show you the end result here. So this is the end result of the image overall. Now, I don't have the original available because, again, I focus stacked this. Actually, this one, nope. Just want to see, oh, well, that doesn't look good. Yeah, so I don't have the original available of this, but nonetheless, these are there was this leaf, and I only enhanced the colors that were visible in the leaf. I didn't add anything. I didn't like manipulate this in any way other than enhancing the colors in the leaf. And then I desaturated the log, or not the log, the piece of wood that's back here. I desaturated that. But all of the colors that you are seeing existed in the leaf. I just enhanced them. I did this after focus stacking the image. You know, you can see all of these images over here. I used to stack this particular photo, and this is the type of work that I do. So for me, I didn't use a flash on this one, by the way. I just used the in-camera focus stacking, or focus racking, I should say, feature. And I think I ended up stacking like 40, 30 images, I don't know, something like that, to create this particular final image that we're looking at here. But this is the type of work that I really enjoy doing for fun. I would probably will print this out and put it into a photo album, and that's about it. But I'm not going to try to sell this or make any profit off of these. But this is something that, you know, as a hobby, you know, outside of shooting headshots, which is something that I like doing, is shooting portraits. I also enjoy doing macro photography like this. So that is my overall goal and what you will see in the future of this channel. And Daniela says, hey, well, if you have an email, we can get in touch and I will gladly share whatever I can to aid you with the macro endeavors. Yeah, so here, my email is freewillphotos@gmail.com. But I'm going to put it into the chat. So, yeah, I would love any insight as I grow in my macro experience. But I would have loved to get a tighter shot of the veins on this leaf. It just didn't work out for me to have the opportunity to go and do that because my dog seen a rabbit, and so he took off running, and I had to go get him. And then by the time I got him, the inspiration was lost. So that is what it is. Here's a fun fact. If your dog isn't well behaved, don't let the dog go with you on photo walks like this. He ruined the experience for me. I love him, but he did kind of ruin that experience for me. So, yeah, that is that is that. Let me see, make sure I got everything here. Yeah, so the last thing that is coming to the channel in 2024 is going to be product reviews. Now, this isn't me by any means saying like I'm going to turn into a product review primary channel. Absolutely not. I am going to be primary photo editing. However, there will be products that I review, things that I use. So this isn't going to be like people emailing me and saying, hey, review my product. It's going to be stuff that I use or things that I have purchased with my own money, not stuff that's been given to me or anything of that sort. And really, if I'm doing a review on a particular product, it's because I'm recommending it for people to maybe consider picking up for their own work. And that's just because I'm using it in my work or I found use for it in my work. And I think that it would be beneficial. I understand everyone has different needs in their work. So I'm not going to say like, hey, if I review this product, you got to go run out and get it. And many times I may not even have an affiliate link for the product unless it's something that I really say, hey, this is a big deal product. I think you guys should go out and get it. But that is my hope, is to bring more product reviews to the channel and just kind of share the gear that I'm using, because one of the questions that I get from local photographers, and I also get emails, is how or what type of gear do you use? And I don't think that the gear is as important, which is why in the description of most of my videos, I have all of my gear listed out, because I'm not one of those people that's like, no, you can't know what gear I have, because if you know that, then you'll be able to do what I do. I don't believe that's the truth. And I don't believe that gear replaces photography IQ or information, experience, things of that sort. You could be in front of the most beautiful scene and have the most expensive camera, the best gear that everyone has, all of the professional photographers have used, they salivate over, and you can still show up, take a very crappy photo. And you can't blame the gear and you can't blame the location. So the only thing that you can blame is yourself. And that's because you don't know how to use it. And even if you knew how to use the camera, that's technical. Photography is creative, and it's very much about what you are removing, because we see way more than the camera will ever capture. Like visually, we just see way more than the camera will ever capture. But as a photographer, we have to see how the camera sees, and we also have to think what would be interesting enough for the viewer. And that's where true photography happens. The camera is just a means to getting that vision from the mind of the photographer into some sort of deliverable medium, be it a photo, a calendar, a print, whatever it may be, right? So that's why I'm recommending gear, not because I think gear is important, but it's because there are things that do help make things a lot easier for us. Like a camera with a flip out screen is something that I need. I need a flip out screen on my cameras. I remember shooting DSLRs that didn't have flip out screens, and it didn't bother me as much because there weren't options for flip out screens. But now that I've used them, it is extremely hard for me to go back to not having a flip out screen. So I will always recommend getting a camera that has a flip out screen if it's something that you think you need, because you're shooting down low, and my knee, I have a messed up knee. I can't bend my knee very well. So being able to kind of bend at the waist or sit in a chair and hold the camera at a lower angle without having to get down on a knee or anything like that is extremely helpful for me. So, you know, from an accessibility standpoint, I need a flip out screen. And thank you, Danielle. I will check that out on in a little while. But yeah, so I said a lot, talked about photo editing, backgrounds, talked about the future of the channel, which is going to be a very well-rounded editing platform. There's going to be Lightroom tutorials, there's going to be Luminar, there's going to be Photoshop, there's going to be Affinity Photo, and there's going to be ON1. But what you're going to see is ON1 being used more as a plugin, because my digital asset manager is probably going to go back to being Lightroom. Now, I use this in my client work already, so I'm familiar with it, and I have a pretty good workflow of what I like to do and see inside of ON1. So I'll probably be doing that here in the future on the channel. So it's not, you know, nothing against ON1's digital asset manager. I love ON1, I really do, but I'm finding that I'm spending more time in Lightroom as well as Photoshop, and the workflow between Lightroom and Photoshop is just that much more efficient for me. Not that I can't get around it using ON1, because I've shown how I do that, but there's something to be said about using the two systems. So if ON1 and Affinity get together and they find a way to make a synergistic digital asset manager and a raster editor mashup very well, I think we will see that would be an interesting combination. I won't make any predictions about like people leaving Lightroom, because Lightroom is so much more than just an editor, as well as Photoshop. There's a level of inspiration that comes out of these two software, so we'll see. And Daniela says she uses Zarine Stacker, which is very useful for the brush you have, where you can select the best parts of focused areas. Yeah, so Helicon Focus does something very similar to that, if not the same thing. I don't know enough about it because I've only been using it for about a week, maybe a week and a half. So I'm still learning, watching videos, but the learning curve, surprisingly, has been very, very easy. So I'm thankful that I was able to pick that up and start running with it, and we'll see, what ends up happening down the line. But thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. So yeah, those are, a series of things that are coming to the channel in 2024. I want to say thank you to everyone who has hit that subscribe button. This year we jumped into the 3,000 subscribers, which was recent. I think that was in November or beginning of this month. And I'm just extremely grateful for the support that I've been getting as I post the content onto this channel, and the relationships that I've made, people that I talk to over email or over on Vero. If you're on Vero, please, let me throw my Vero up real quick. If you are on Vero, hit me up at FreeWill Photos, and we can exchange information about photography, talk about images, whatever. And I also just enjoy going to see other people's work. I know Sean, he has a Vero account, and I see his work all the time, and it's just nice to be able to share photos with one another. And that's what I prefer. I don't use Instagram. I have an Instagram account for the sake of having one, but I don't use it. I use Vero way more than I use anything else. So if you are looking to hang out on a social platform besides YouTube, consider hitting me up on Vero. Otherwise, you can send me an email at freewillphotos@gmail.com. And I do get back to my emails. I answer those. Not always, within 24 hours, 48 hours, but usually within a few days, I do get back to answering those emails. So please send me an email if that's something that you care to do. With that, I'll say Happy New Year's to everyone. And it looks like Mark says he has to run. Yep, nah, I think I'm getting off as well. Yes, and Daniela, we will see each other in the same channel because I'm not going anywhere in 2024, at least not by choice. If it's my choice, I'm staying. So with that, Happy New Year's to everyone, and I will see you. This will be my last video for 2023, which is a live stream. But I look forward to, just continue the relationship and growing in 2024. So until the next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.